residential communities, more specifically biomimicry in architecture and regenerative architecture. I also wanted to highlight that this piece, as I had come to find out, is kind of like a blend of real-world examples and kind of artist depictions of what could be in the future when these things are implemented or these designs are implemented. So I will point out which images I use are real world. So this first one right here is real world. It's from, it's located in Taiwan, and it's called Tao Zhu Yin Yan. Super cool. I'll talk about it a little bit more going forward, or down the line. So here's our agenda, the requirements for the Capstone project. This image I used here is an artist depiction. It's not a real building yet. Super cool though. This is kind of why I chose this project, because I was really hoping to find a lot of real world examples of buildings like this. Wasn't really the case, but yeah, super cool. The project proposal, I'll just read this first part here. This capstone aims to explore ways we could transform our built environment to be more environmentally friendly and sustainable for the planet. People occupy buildings and residential homes for a good majority of their waking hours. This means a lot of activities taking place throughout buildings every single day and across the entirety of the planet. These activities have the opportunity to be the sites of great change across a number of sectors, such as water management, waste management, air quality, food, and sustainable energy. That's kind of the gist of it. Yeah, this picture that I included for this slide is an artist's depiction of food walls, something that is widely underutilized is all these spaces that we have within our communities, neighborhoods, or buildings that we could be using to grow food. So food wall would be super cool. Going forward here, the first literature review that I found really helpful is called Biophilic Design and Architecture and Its Contributions to Health, Well-Being, and Sustainability. Some key points for this. So it shifts focus from how green buildings look to how they function with their surrounding environment, what they do, and what they provide for the natural sphere. I briefly mentioned the picture I used for this slide is not a real building, though as cool as it would be to see that if you're just driving around and you see that one. But it is a very popular concept in biomimicry and architecture, is copying the termite mound for ventilation in a building. So purifying airflow. Kind of a popular concept when you start talking about biomimic architecture. And then how they function as a system, how buildings or communities function as a system or set of relationships instead of individually. I think that was key. More of a systems thinking. That's kind of how my project ended up going, was becoming a biomimicry systems ecosystem, kind of. And then this notion of biophilia was developed and adopted within the architectural domain, drawing attention to the emotional aspects of human needs for interactions. So biophilia is kind of a big word in this, and for this project, I had learned, because in the real world, biomimicry is not really commonplace or being like a word being used in many / most of these architectural firms. Biophilia, though, is something a little bit more manageable. I'll discuss it a little bit more down the line, but that is something that I found out from the professionals, the boots on the ground. Here is a table that I pulled from that article. You can pause the video if you'd like to take a more in-depth look at it, but I thought it was really helpful. Just biophilia concepts, or more biomimicry concepts, as specific as like the amount of sunlight, the air that is interacting with or influencing the building or coming into contact with it. It gets to like the shape of things, the type of light that you have. So it's really interesting. Going forward to the second literature review, it's called Regenerative Sustainability for the Built Environment. highlights the importance of switching from mechanistic worldview to an ecological or living systems worldview. So that mechanistic worldview is what we're currently living within right now. Western culture worldview kind of spreading around the world, unfortunately. The Industrial Revolution or industrialism dictates humans conquer nature, so we're living outside of nature, thinking that we're just superior and nature's just happening around us. We're kind of like main character energy. Humans have that main character energy. Regenerative development has attracted increased interest as a discourse for reframing and reconceiving green building practices. Instead of working in isolation, many are working holistically from a systems perspective, which I think is super, super hopeful. Instead of all these industries just trying to tackle one component at a time, now we're taking more of a systems perspective, tackling a number of attacking from a number of angles at the same time. So I feel like that could really speed up the process of getting more of these concepts or ideas out into the real world and into real world designs. This implementation plan here, kind of pretty straightforward. Started with the project research, went into different discourses for sustainable architecture, just trying to pinpoint what angle I was going to take. I formed the blogs around different components that I found really interesting. And then these blogs were posted or sent to Mr. Stefan, who's our assistant director of this program. I used all of the information that I had gathered to draw what a sustainable community may look like. This was my deliverable. I'm not artsy. It's not a pretty piece, but it was fun. It was cool to draw. I discussed the various components of these ecosystems biomimicry community is kind of what I crafted together. And then I submitted all this for the completion of the project. The tasks completed here. Let's see. So I did my research, green buildings, regenerative architecture, biomimicry architecture. I did some research into the resilience principles analysis, so how this would stand up in a world of climate change, the why it's important and why it's relevant. And then also the Paris Accord, 2015 Paris Accord SDGs, how many of those were being addressed with this project and with this concept. I formed blogs. Those I had said already went to Mr. Stefan, who posted them to the Cascadia student page. I did do some real field work, I guess you could say. It was unfruitful. I visited a site in Arizona called Arco Santee, and then I also did an internship at an architectural firm that I believe their website did state that they were more of a green sustainability architectural firm, so I thought I would hear a lot more about that in the tour. I really kind of was let down. I filled out the final report. I did that blog series, and then I submitted all of this to Stefan for completion. The results achieved here. So I gathered enough information from all these different sources, pardon me, and then built that into the blog series. The URLs right there, posted right here. And then I also drew that hand-drawn deliverable. This picture up here is a computer-generated, but the Venus project is a real project. It's located in Florida. I kind of heard about it actually quite a while ago, probably like 7 years ago. And this is kind of what got me into thinking about green buildings. Super cool. If you're interested, I would definitely recommend checking it out. They kind of want to eventually build a circular city like that. That's kind of pictured there. So definitely recommend checking it out. So my results achieved here. Let's see. So, this project it wasn't how I thought it was going to turn out, but I did find out some cool stuff. So closed loop urban design or waste management, the importance of that, being inside, like if there's city communities or neighborhoods. The living machine kind of ties into that a bit. It's more so with water and also waste management. But the living machine, summarized pretty briefly here, would be it's taking water that is flushed or used in faucets at sinks. It flows through a very short piping system to almost man-made wetlands. It's doing the same effects as wetlands, but you kind of do it in these big potted, what are they called? Tanks. And that undergoes the same purifying that happens in wetlands naturally. And then that water goes on to further purification through actual wetlands if it's accessible. If you have some big portions of land near the building, that's really, really helpful. It's not completely necessary, but it's super helpful for if you want to extra purification. And then that water then is pushed right back to the building to be used. I believe it's gray water, if I remember correctly. So water in sinks and toilets, and not to be just drank, but super helpful, and definitely would help us take some of the stress off of municipal sources of water. You know, a lot of inefficiencies right now with our water use in the States. So that actually ties into the next example I found, was generating clean water sources. Stefan helped me find this one. Hydro panels are pretty similar to solar panels in how they look. Their site does not disclose how their process works exactly, but they can be located on the ground or on your roof, and it pretty much pulls water from the atmosphere. You can hook it up to your house, and then filters right through your house and comes out of a system out in your fridge if you wanted it to be coming out of a fridge or any kind of faucet. Pretty cool stuff. The last two actually, sorry, is going to be the Singapore's Capita Spring. So it's one of the largest in urban food farms out there. They have it in a huge skyscraper actually. Whole different number of plants and foods that they're growing there, and they distribute it to local community members and restaurants, which is awesome. Kind of highlights how a lot of spaces are being underutilized. We could be using it for growing food. And lastly is going to be that Taozu Yanyan that I had mentioned earlier with that cool picture located in Taiwan. That is almost like a huge example of regenerative architecture, biomimicry, because it's almost acting like a tree. They have, I think it was tens of thousands of different plants and trees in that one huge building. I think people are renting these out for condos. And it's bringing in all of the nasty city air at the base of the building. As the air is moving up through the building, it filters out just like a tree. And then the hub, aka the brains of operation, was also included in my blog series too, because I think that's really important to get some community involvement, keeping everyone on the same page of goals. I'm kind of going to breeze through these parts here, getting a little short on time. So the resilience and the relevance, so maintaining diversity, redundancy of the SDGs. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those were influenced my project. It fosters adaptive complex systems thinking, which I think is highly important, and encourages learning and participation with community members. Challenges and lessons learned here. I'll let you pause this video if you wanted to take a look at that quote I had mentioned. Difficulty sourcing real-world insight was one of the challenges I had learned. Our technology is a bit lacking, and our public interest is also lacking. So we have a long way to go. I'll kind of explain that on this next slide a little bit further. So I'll start with the cons. So we have financial barriers, and we have a long way to go for actually executing on a large scale. So there's a lot of money in the construction, in the different industries backed up by construction, so lumber or timber and fossil fuels. So I do think there are bad actors who don't want to see that change because it would be affecting their money flow. And then I'll get to the pros because I have to wrap this up, but it has the potential to gain a lot of public interest with being cool, artsy, and high-tech. So if we did have a lot more cool buildings that are making a true impact, I feel like that would definitely resonate, especially with the younger generations. something to kind of be proud of, and then have your friends also get the same kind of systems implemented or set up inside their house too. I think it could really gain in some popularity. Another positive would be we are far enough along to start developing this more heavily. We do have the knowledge out there. We have the professionals and the experts who are really wanting to see this gain popularity and become a real thing. So we do have that potential. And then also this would create lasting beneficial change if implemented, which is super, super cool. That's really why it's highly important if we are able to implement these in real life. I'm super passionate about this project. Overall, it's really cool. But yeah, that finishes it up. Thank you for tuning in.